Look at your screen. This isn't a loading error, and it's not a glitch. This is the reality of government transparency in December 2025. On Friday night, the Department of Justice finally took the Epstein Library live. For 30 days, the entire country has been counting down to this moment, expecting the full truth. But as the clock hit the deadline, the thousands who rushed to the site were met with a digital waiting room, with some waiting over 10 minutes just to gain access. When the files finally loaded, the shock was immediate. Instead of names and details, researchers found massive, unbroken sections of total darkness. We are talking about at least 550 pages that have been entirely blacked out from top to bottom. The centerpiece of this mystery is a document labeled Grand Jury New York. It is 119 pages long, and every single word has been erased. Another section of the release features 255 consecutive pages that are nothing but solid black boxes. This brings us to the hook question that is currently rocking the Capitol. Is the government following the law, or are they protecting names? The Epstein Files Transparency Act is very clear. Records cannot be withheld to prevent embarrassment or political sensitivity. Yet, while the DOJ claims these redactions are only to protect victims, high-ranking lawmakers are already pointing out that 119 pages of a complete blackout isn't just a choice. It's a violation of federal law. Fueling the fire of cover-up theories was the technical failure of the site itself. At the moment of launch, the official search tool, the one promised to make these files easy to navigate, was reportedly broken and failed to return basic results. This chaos happened just hours after Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche admitted the DOJ would not meet the full legal deadline, releasing only a partial batch of files while keeping thousands more hidden for weeks. As the search bars failed and the blacked-out pages piled up, the American public realized the battle for transparency wasn't over. It was just getting nastier. Today, we go inside the pages they don't want you to see. The discovery and the complaint while the DOJ's blackouts hide the present. A single document escaped the ink that exposes a horrifying past the government tried to bury for 30 years. Tucked away in this first batch of files is an official FBI complaint form, an FD-71, dated September 3, 1996. For decades, Maria Farmer has told anyone who would listen that she tried to warn the authorities about Jeffrey Epstein, only to be ignored, silenced, and called a liar. Today, the government's own records prove she was telling the truth. This 1996 report confirms that Farmer contacted the FBI's New York field office to report a disturbing crime. Epstein had stolen personal, explicit photographs of her underage sisters. These girls were only 12 and 16 years old at the time. Maria didn't just guess. She warned investigators that Epstein was likely selling these images to potential buyers and even described a specific modeling book he kept in a safe. A book filled with photos of young girls at swimming pools and in compromising positions. She was handing them the key to the entire operation before it even went global. The report explicitly states that when Maria Farmer tried to confront Epstein about the photos, he didn't just deny it. He threatened her life. He told her that if she ever told a soul, he would burn her house down with her family inside. This wasn't just a tip about a creep. It was an allegation of child pornography, interstate transportation of stolen property, and terroristic threats. And what was the FBI's response? According to Maria's legal team and the lack of follow-up in these files, the response was non-existent. The agent she spoke to reportedly hung up on her mid-sentence. They never interviewed her sisters. They never searched Epstein's Madison Avenue mansion. They never opened a formal investigation. Instead, the FBI chose to do absolutely nothing, effectively giving Jeffrey Epstein a 23-year head start to expand his operation into the international trafficking ring we know today. The human cost and the systemic failure, this is the American angle that is sparking bipartisan outrage across the country today. If the government had simply done its job in 1996, if they had followed the law instead of hanging up the phone, over 1,000 future victims could have been spared from decades of trauma. We are talking about girls like Virginia Giuffre and Annie Farmer, whose lives were altered forever because of this specific failure. The inner circle and speakerphone power plays the decades of silence from the FBI leads us back to a single, uncomfortable question. Who was actually in the room? New investigative reporting from the New York Times has recently detailed just how deep the bond between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein really went, describing a friendship that was far closer than the White House has ever admitted. According to former employees and assistants of Jeffrey Epstein, the two men weren't just casual acquaintances. They were best friends for a period of over 10 years. Epstein reportedly used this relationship as a weapon. His former assistants revealed that he had a habit of putting Donald Trump on speakerphone while they were in the room. This wasn't just a friendly chat, it was a power play. Epstein wanted to show his employees, his associates, and even the young women he was grooming exactly how much reach he had. He would put the future president on the phone to discuss women and sexual conquests, effectively saying, "Look at who I can get on the line. Look at how powerful I am." It was a calculated move to ensure that no one, not his staff and certainly not his victims, would ever dare to speak up against him. The files and investigative reports describe the two men flying on each other's private planes and partying together at high-end clubs from New York to Palm Beach. One of the most disturbing details comes from court records involving a survivor who was only 14 years old at the time. She described being brought to Mar-a-Lago by Epstein and introduced to Donald Trump. In her testimony, she recalls Epstein nudging Trump and saying, "This is a nice one," referring to the young girl. For years, the official story from the Trump camp has been that he broke off the friendship in 2004 because he realized Epstein was a creep, or because Epstein stole workers from the Mar-a-Lago spa, including Virginia Giuffre. But the newly released records tell a more complicated story. They show a relationship built on mutual social circles and shared properties that lasted much longer than the one-time falling out the public was told about. Conflicting stories and the 2025 mystery today, the White House is dismissing these reports as stale regurgitation and fake news, insisting that Trump did nothing wrong and was actually the one who eventually banned Epstein from his club. However, the survivors' lawyers are pointing out a glaring contradiction. If Trump knew Epstein was a creep back in the early 2000s, why is his administration currently fighting so hard to keep the 2025 files redacted? This is where the continuity breaks down for the public. We are being asked to believe that the president was the hero who kicked Epstein out, while his Department of Justice is simultaneously blacking out hundreds of pages of records that mention his name. As we move into the next segment, we're going to look at the bizarre events that unfolded at the White House on the very same day these files were released. A series of announcements that many believe were designed to keep you from asking these exact questions. On Friday, December 19th, as the legal deadline for the files expired, the president held a high-profile event in the Oval Office. But he wasn't there to talk about transparency or Jeffrey Epstein. Instead, he was there to launch TrumpRx, a new government initiative and website, TrumpRx.gov, designed to bypass insurance middlemen and offer massive discounts on prescription drugs. The scene was pure political theater. Flanked by pharmaceutical executives and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, the president spent the hour focused on what he called the Trump Gold Card. He described it as a green card on steroids, a fast-track residency program that had reportedly already generated $1.3 billion in sales in just a few days. The branding was everywhere: TrumpRx, Trump Gold Cards, and even the physical rebranding of the nation's capital. Just hours earlier, construction workers were seen scaling the Kennedy Center, adding the president's name to the facade to create the Trump Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. 11:30 to 1300 hours, the runaway moment in the Oval Office for the American audience watching live. The contrast was impossible to ignore. On one side of the split screen, you had thousands of pages of redacted Epstein files being dumped onto a broken website. On the other, you had a celebratory president showing off a gold-colored card and bragging about drug price reductions of up to 600%. But the moment of truth came at the end of the presser. As reporters tried to shift the conversation to the elephant in the room, the Epstein Files, the president did something rarely seen from a man who usually loves the spotlight.
That I really don't want to soil it up by asking questions, even questions that are very fair questions that I'd love to answer. So
he then turned and walked out of the room, leaving the press corps shouting questions about the redacted documents into an empty doorway. In the world of U.S. politics, this is what's known as a tactical retreat. By refusing to soil his pharmaceutical victory with unpleasant questions, He effectively tried to kill the Epstein news cycle before it could even start. Why the Distraction Matters American viewers are incredibly sensitive to what we call distraction politics. Framing the day this way makes the viewer feel like they are seeing through a smokescreen. Critics and lawmakers, like Representatives Garcia and Raskin, weren't buying the drug price victory lap. They pointed out that while the president was focused on gold cards and marble signage, his administration was actively violating federal law by withholding the Epstein Files. It wasn't just about the drugs or the buildings. It was about the timing. Launching a major healthcare initiative and renaming a national landmark on the exact same day as the most sensitive document release in decades is a classic move to split the headlines. They wanted the evening news to lead with Trump RX and lower drug prices, not 119 pages of redactions. But as we move into our final segment, you'll see that the distraction didn't work. Instead of quieting the storm, the White House's actions have only convinced Congress that it's time for a much more aggressive legal response. The violation of federal law, the distraction of Trump RX, might have worked for a few hours, but by Friday night, the legal reality set in. The Epstein Files Transparency Act wasn't just a suggestion. It was a federal mandate with a hard deadline of December 19th. By only releasing a partial batch and announcing a rolling release over the next few weeks, the Department of Justice officially moved into a state of noncompliance. Legal scholars and lawmakers are now pointing to Section 2 of the Act, which explicitly prohibits staged or delayed releases. High-ranking members of Congress, including Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, are calling this an intentional slow walk designed to protect powerful individuals. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez even went as far as to say that everyone involved, from Attorney General Pam Bondi to the rest of the administration, will have to answer for protecting what she called a network of power and connections. Threats of impeachment and obstruction. The fallout is now moving from the headlines to the halls of Congress. Attorney General Pam Bondi and Deputy AG Todd Blanche are facing unprecedented pressure. Representative Khanna has stated he is officially considering bringing articles of impeachment against Bondi for her failure to comply with the law. Meanwhile, Thomas Massie has suggested that Bondi could be referred for criminal prosecution or charged with obstruction of justice. The anger isn't just about the delay. It's about the content of the redactions. Reports are surfacing that the DOJ specifically blacked out the names of politically exposed individuals and government officials, which is a direct violation of the law's prohibition against redacting for reputational harm or political sensitivity. Even some of the president's own supporters are turning, with a recent poll showing that only 44% of Republicans approve of how this release has been handled. The most transparent administration in history is now facing a bipartisan uprising that could lead to a full-blown constitutional showdown. Conclusion: the drip feed war. As we head into the final days of 2025, the strategy from the Justice Department seems clear. They want to use the drip feed method. By releasing documents in small, heavily redacted batches over the Christmas and New Year holidays, they are hoping the American public will lose interest or get distracted by the festivities. They want the story to fade away in a series of rolling updates that never quite deliver the full picture. But as the survivors have made clear, they aren't going anywhere. This isn't just about a client list anymore. It's about whether a law signed by the president can be ignored by his own cabinet. The DOJ has promised hundreds of thousands of more pages in the coming weeks, and you can bet we will be right here to analyze every single one of them. The government is betting that you'll tune out for the holidays, but the truth doesn't take a vacation. If you want to stay updated on the next tranche of files and the potential impeachment proceedings, make sure to hit that subscribe button. The war for the Epstein Files is just getting started.